Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this special edition of today's Better Managers Briefing. I'm Anne Franca, the Chief Executive of the CMI, and today I'm really delighted to host a roundtable on the importance and impact of apprenticeships. As you know, next week is National Apprenticeship Week, and CMI has led the Trailblazer Group in establishing the Management and Leadership Apprenticeships, of which we're very proud. And so joining me today, my special guests are first, Gillian Keegan, MP. She is the Parliamentary Undersecretary of State for Apprenticeships and Skills. She is actually the only degree-level apprenticeship person in the House of Commons, so knows what she's talking about in this area. Also joining me, Rob Nitch, CBE, the Chief Operating Officer of the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education. Rob has led the implementation of apprenticeships in this country, and prior to that, he was the Army's personnel director involved in the professional leadership of the 1,600 personnel in the HR and training department. But it wouldn't be Apprenticeship Week without some apprentices, so please join me in welcoming first Sue Sanders. Sue is an NHS apprentice. She's the Castle Place Practice Operations Manager, overseeing a patient population of 15,000 and a part of the Royal Devon and Exeter NHS Trust in a pioneering new venture to integrate primary and secondary care. So welcome to you, Sue. And last but certainly not least, Mike Green, the Managing Director of Red Systems. Mike left school at 16 and gained lots of work experience before setting up Red Systems in 2003. He did a senior leader apprenticeship, and I think he's going to share with us just how it's helped him to transform his business with increased turnover and increased staff. So welcome to all of you. Delighted to have you here. So National Apprenticeship Week. I think I'd like to start actually by asking our apprentices, Mike and Sue, why did you choose an apprenticeship? And what's been the impact of this apprenticeship on your studies, yourself, and your organization? Maybe kick us off, Sue.
Thanks, Anne. Yeah, for me, I'd reached a level of management through internal promotion, really, with no formal qualification. So I saw the CMI Level 5 Management and Leadership apprenticeship as a way to and a fantastic opportunity to develop my knowledge and skills in that area, you know, whilst undertaking my day-to-day role as well. So yeah, it's been absolutely fantastic. So I think the benefits and the impact on my role in the organisation, it's improved my ability to lead effectively, and you know, definitely developed my knowledge in different areas of management. And recently I was able to transfer my skills from secondary care to primary care. So it's helped me so much since taking on my new role. So yeah, I really have felt the benefits.
Mm-hmm. And have you been involved in some of the important activities of the NHS during this COVID crisis? What can you share that with us?
Yeah, so in primary care, we're on the, you know, we're on the front line basically, you know, so any government announcements has an immediate impact on us, and obviously at the moment we're concentrating on the rollout of the vaccine. So that's really lovely to be part of that.
And a hugely well-managed project that is, if I may say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mike, what about yourself? Tell us your story.
Hello then. Well, I left school at 16. I was fortunate enough when I left school to do a YTS. So I was employed by Alfred McAlpine, who were a big local employer in my local area. And I did 4 years of on-job learning. So I did my ONC and my HNC. So I was an advocate of on-the-job learning. The educational route isn't for everybody when they first leave school, and there is different pathways to your final career destination. Set up the business, worked for large construction companies, and then set up the business in 2003. The turnover had grown to just under £6 million, and I'd got to the point where I felt that I needed some more education, because as an employer of people, I think I had 15, 16 staff at the time, you feel responsible and want the business to be sustainable. So I'd looked at doing an MBA. I thought I needed some more education. The team had grown big, and I didn't think I had the managerial skills really to develop that team for the company to live beyond me. And then an opportunity arose to do the MBA through an apprenticeship at Manchester University. I thought it was a fantastic opportunity, and certainly was the push that I needed to go and do that. It broke down the barrier for me to be able to do it. I've had 2 years of doing it. I'm at dissertation stage at the moment, so this week has been spent furrowing away in a room, writing lots of words and reflecting on my leadership really over the past 2 years. The output from the company has been tremendous. We're forecast to turn over 11 million next year, so we've nearly doubled in turnover in 3 years. But more importantly, it's been, I believe it's sustainable. So we've got a senior leadership team in place now, and it's really more than anything. We've now got 7 other, well, including me, there's 7 employees in the company from a staff of 25 who are undertaking some form of further education. So I think not only has it provided me an opportunity, I think that it's been the trigger to provide other people in the company opportunities to further education as well.
So that's a very important point, and we'll come back to that. It's convinced you of the importance of upskilling and training your own staff and doing apprenticeships. Now, it would be remiss of me, Gillian, you yourself were a degree apprenticeship, did a degree apprenticeship. Could you share with us what you think the impact that had for you?
Well, it's a life changer, and actually listening to Michael, it sounds like we grew up in the same neck of the woods. So I grew up in Huyton and went to a comprehensive school in Knowsley and left school at 16, as everybody did then. I did leave with a couple of O-levels, as most people didn't then. And actually, my dad worked for Alfred McAlpine's for 40 odd years, and most of my family did. So I bet our paths have crossed in that way as well. And everybody, the best options you could get was either YTS or an apprenticeship. The apprenticeship was the best option if you could get that, because it was, they give you loads and loads of training. And I was really lucky. I got an apprenticeship in a car factory called Delco Electronics in General Motors sphere in a place called Kirby. And that was what would be called a rotational degree level apprenticeship. Now, it never had anything like that fancy name, but they'd take you as far as you could go. I went to Liverpool John Moores 1 day a week after going to Kirby College 1 day a week. And, I've since then, not only am I the first apprentice actually to become the Apprenticeship and Skills Minister, but I am officially the world's biggest fan of apprenticeships, because it changed my life completely. I so believe in that way of learning, no matter what you're doing. The one I signed off last week was a space engineer. You can get literally anywhere now with an apprenticeship, and it's just a superior way of learning, I think, particularly in a fast moving world, because so many things change and you can never be out of date if you do an apprenticeship, because it's kind of like a way of learning. It's a way of life, and I absolutely love it. And I'm not surprised Michael's gone on to do extra courses, because it does become addictive.
That's great, lifelong learning. Now, Rob, the Army, again, a huge fan of apprenticeships, a big employer. Have you any experience of their power to transform lives?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, I'm probably the exception on the panel because I'm not an apprentice, but the other three panel members have pointed to that really clearly. I'm sorry, Minister, I apologise. I'll try and put it straight by getting to space in due course. But actually, my own journey, I'm a vocational learner. That's how I have learned that I learn best. And in fact, I wish I had known that earlier in my life. The Army's got 19,000 apprentices. It's a huge number of people, and actually it's an organisation which provides people with opportunity. But actually, coming up to date and what I'm doing now and why I feel so committed to this enterprise is you can see the difference that it makes in people's lives. And it's not just a safety net for some people, but actually as the program has expanded, and I think, the work the CMI done has been fantastic to spread the apprenticeship offer, across, all educational levels. And, it's not only what it can do for individuals, but I also believe in it because I believe in Britain, and this is about productivity and efficiency. So it's very much about that individual journey. It's about business success. And, particularly as we look to the future, I think it's about national success. So they really work from what I've seen and at those multiple levels as well, Anne.
So that's great. And you mentioned productivity. We regularly survey our apprentices, and we know that 3 out of 5 tell us they have improved their productivity. Actually, almost all, 96% say they've improved their communication skills, which we've just done a major piece of work that shows communication is the #1 management skill. And they've also improved their ability to manage themselves, all critical skills. So Julian and Rob, what hope would you have that apprenticeships would hold in our education landscape? How integral would you like them to be? Maybe start with you, Gillian.
Hopefully you can hear me because I keep getting the wheel of doom, but I think they're absolutely central. You can do an apprenticeship any age, any stage, for any career, up to any level. I mean, it fits pretty much everything. We have 600 different careers, different standards that the IFAPE manage for us. What I also love about them is the fact that employers develop the standards with us. So you can't be out of sync with what employers want. It's the most surefire way to get valuable skills that are valuable to a workplace, because there's no disconnect between you and the workplace, you're in it. So I often speak to young people now, and quite often they'll have done a degree and they'll come back and do a level 4 or a level 5 apprenticeship to be more useful to a business or to get the skills that a business needs. And often they say to me, nobody told me about this. And I think that's kind of part of the challenge, and the white paper that we just launched, and really to put that emphasis on technical education, further education and apprenticeships and employer-led education, I think is just going to be game changer for this country. And I'm so looking forward to being part of that journey, because it's overdue. It is overdue. And I think we've got massive skills gaps in this country, and we've got low productivity. And apprenticeships are the best way, I think, to solve both of those problems.
So that's a great formula there. Rob, what are your thoughts? What role would you like to see apprenticeships play?
As the Minister has described, I think it's really important that not only have we got this industry, the demand, the productivity demand, but we need to recognise that we're all individuals, and our educational journey needs to be personalised. And for some people, something that's very strongly academic is absolutely right, but for other people, they need a different form of offer. And I think apprenticeships being understood as that, both in the workplace and coming into the workplace, is really important. And I think getting that conversation going and people realising the breadth of the offer is a sort of really good thing for National Apprenticeship Week to focus on in the week that's coming. But I would also comment, and I know we're on apprenticeships here, but there's a huge amount of work going on to complement apprenticeships with other technical education offers in the educational environment. So T-levels, technical levels are rolling out now, and we're beginning to do work with other technical qualifications. So my ambition would be that there's an offer for everybody, starting at the academic end and going down to the practical, and that spans the workplace, which is where the apprenticeship is, as well as the sort of formal full-time educative space, and in between that, the ability to bridge with part-time offers.
Some great comments there. And Michael, so you're a fan, you're a small business, you've doubled your turnover. What would you say to get more small businesses taking up apprenticeships like you did? How do you think we should go about that?
I think from my perspective, I touched on it before, I think an engaged leader is essential. The financial incentive is not enough, and nor should it be the sole stimulus to take on an apprentice. There needs to be a greater need for the business than some financial gain to take an apprentice on. We've got 7 people doing further education now. Before I did the further education, we had none in the organisation, and so I think you need the key decision makers within the company to be engaged within that process. Secondly, I came back having started an apprenticeship, singing its praises and offering it to people within the company. We've got one guy here, George. He's been head of our purchasing for 6 years. He did an ancient history degree at university, and he's responsible for buying all the metal in our organisation. And so we said to George, how about getting some further education with an apprenticeship? Unfortunately, there's a stigma attached to the name apprenticeship, in my opinion, within the work organisation, within the work environment, where people see it only as a junior or a school leaver form of education. I believe it changed that in our organisation, but again, you need advocates within the organisation. You need people to go and experience it and to become advocates of the impact that it can have. But my final point really is around SMEs. Speaking as an SME owner, the younger the apprentice, the more challenging it is within an organisation. Large companies have spare capacity, have a training manager, have an HR manager. 99% of the businesses in the UK are SMEs, which means that 99% of the companies who are taking apprenticeships on have a challenge if they have young people within there. And at the moment, young people need apprentices. So somehow that gap needs to be bridged.
It's an excellent point, and we'll come back to that point later on. But Sue, our research at CMI has shown that about 60% of our apprentices are from either the public or the third sector. Now, you're in the public sector, the NHS. How would you go about getting more of our public sector workers, so important in this crisis, to take up apprenticeships like you did?
I think, just in educating employers to the benefits of having well-trained managers and staff. It's, I've seen firsthand, people work their way up to management with not necessarily any management skills whatsoever. So I think, just educating employers to the benefit of that, sharing apprenticeship achievements. I've had a couple apprentices do the CMI level 3, and they loved the whole experience, were really nervous about taking it on in the first place. And just sharing achievements to try and encourage others to sort of get involved. So
I know that Gillian and Rob are both keen to see an uptick in the uptake of a number of apprenticeships that we choose. So you've heard some insights from Sue and Mike about how to do that. What do you think we need to do? To people talk, for example, about career services in schools. What other things could we do to drive uptake?
Okay, we've got lots of things in the white paper, but the first thing is make sure everyone knows about them. Everybody gets to touch and feel them, as Mike did. He became a convert, but everybody gets to see what they can do. And obviously careers is part of that. In terms of the stigma and addressing the brand, we really do have to build the brand image up, and I'm determined to do that. I slightly disagree with Rob when people describe things as academic or not. My route was as academic as anybody I've worked with. I've had people from Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, INSEAD, all over the world. The best academics all work for me in my business career. And the reason is because it is academic, some of it is, some of it isn't, depends what you do. Of those 600, some of the qualifications in there are as academic as you'll get at very senior levels, master's levels, indeed, they go up to. And I think that also the sort of the junior aspect of it is because traditionally they were for young people. In the past, they were the sort of entry, a way of entering into a career. And it's quite unusual, the system we have, which is where you can have anyone get access to them at any stage. I think the more people know about them, the more the better it'll be. It is changing. There's some of the larger companies now who used to have massive graduate programs who have actually switched to entirely degree apprenticeships because they found out that actually the degree apprentices were hungrier in a way. They got better results in the academic bit than the people who were there full time. They all got first. Every single one of the degree apprentices got a first in this particular company. And they've now switched to that model because it works for them. I think more and more, you can become a lawyer or an accountant now through an apprenticeship. Purchasing, Michael mentioned it, the professional qualifications, I'm sure George is doing CIPD, the professional qualifications that you learn are vital, and they are what make you brilliant at your job. And as Sue said, management and leadership skills they've always been the missing ingredient. Years ago, the reason my apprenticeship was even invented by General Motors was because they all realized that leadership and management is something that you need to have specific training for. And and therefore what you're doing, Anne, is vital, I think, in terms of helping also SMEs become more productive, because I think there's a double-edged thing there. Not only has Mike come back and tried to use the same model to educate and give the opportunity to lots of other people, but I'm sure it's given him a lot more skills to be able to make a massive difference in his own business as well, to make it more productive, to grow. Well, it's the numbers say it for itself, right? It's doubled. So I'm sure that part of this training was and having the time out to think strategically and apply that to your business is really important. And that's what training does. It gives you that sort of crossover and transfer of knowledge between the business problem and the techniques to address the business problem, and also listening to everybody else who's gone through it and learning from it. So I think it's a fantastic model. We've got a huge focus on it at a government level. Levelling up is something that we got elected on, and this is the best way of levelling up, and it's also the best way of getting people into the workplace, and we are going to need it. Coronavirus is going to take us, we will take a while to build back better and build the economic recovery. And if you listen to what the Chancellor and the Prime Minister say, a lot of it is about apprenticeships, because even they get it, despite the fact they weren't lucky enough to do one.
Yes, indeed. Well, to your point, I think there was a major announcement today from Amazon that they're taking on 1,500 apprentices. So, and I was speaking with a CEO of a major company, and they told me, and I quote, "My apprentices wipe the floor with my graduates." Now, that obviously no disrespect to the graduates, but it is that on-the-job practical learning and that real hunger. But, Michael mentioned this. Of course, we need to create huge opportunities for young people, but most of the people who will lose their job as a result of the corona crisis are already in employment. So we need to reskill and upskill, and we do need those mid-career opportunities. I'd like to ask Rob, perhaps to start with you. How can we get more people mid-career taking up these offers and more employers letting them do so?
Yeah, no, thanks, Anne. And you know, I think it's a really apposite point, particularly at this stage, that the apprenticeship offer, alongside others, are going to be a bridge for so many people, and it's really encouraging. And you know, and I think it's really important this is said to the sort of people that are listening today, that it's really encouraging that so many employers are sticking with the apprenticeship offer, or they're telling us that, you know, we're going to keep going with it, we're going to come back and do that. And I think that's a tribute to them, and I think it's the right decision. But it is really important that apprenticeship, you know, and I think it's one of the strengths of the apprenticeship program in England, that it provides journeys into work, as well as it allows people to upskill. You know, in terms of the recovery, there is a weakness with it, because you need to be in a job. You know, an apprenticeship is fundamentally a job. But I do think that we can see, you know, some sectors are really badly damaged by this, you know, bricks and mortar retail, hospitality, but there are other sectors where there are fantastic opportunities, and the apprenticeship is a great way to do that. And I would just say that over 50% of apprentices are upskilling in work rather than coming into work. And I think that's really important, and building on that is part of the recovery. But I'd also say that this isn't a binary choice. We need to do both. And you know, the last point I make is that when we look at the experience of the last 10 months, it's also been reassuring that businesses have stayed very committed to trying to bring people into work through this as well. So definitely it's there. We've got experience of using it, and it's worked in the past, but also don't see it as a binary choice, because you need to get that balanced workforce in a business.
Absolutely. And coming to your point about upskilling, maybe another question for Mike. What do you think the government could do? We've heard many employers are embracing this, but what would you like to see the government do to encourage more employers to upskill their existing workforce, as well as obviously taking on young people?
I think there's definitely an awareness job to be done out there of selling apprenticeships, and that they are available for all. From a personal perspective, I think that the offer is very fragmented. So as a business owner, the access to people who, if they're new to your company, rather than upskilling existing workforce, there's fragmented links with universities and with schools. And as a local employer, there should be closer links. And it's incumbent on the employer to go and look for those links. And I just think there's a greater resource within government, educational authorities and universities to maybe have a more collective response to that, for gauging which employers do have opportunities, and engaging them and making them part of their educational communities. You know, I've forged quite close links with Manchester University, haven't been there myself. But if you think about the organisations that are about, and those children who are leaving school, or university graduates who are leaving school, or sixth formers who are leaving and thinking about going degrees, who could do apprenticeship degrees now, there should be a greater connection between business and education providers to bridge that gap, in my opinion.
So I know that Gillian will want to tell us how the white paper addresses that very point. By the way, if you have a question, please put it in the chat. We will be taking questions later on in the broadcast. But, you know, talking about that white paper, we were very pleased to see many of the inclusions in it, including an emphasis on local employment, which is exactly Michael's point, creating those local hubs, joining up between companies and employers. And maybe you'd like to comment, Gillian, on how you intend that to look like going forward.
Well, it's fantastic to hear what Mike's just said, because it's kind like here's one we made earlier. Literally, the white paper is aimed at doing that. And I think it's kind of an obvious thing to do in a way. And there's been thousands of pieces of paper written about skills and how to bridge that gap between particularly SMEs, which most people are employed in, and the education sector, so that what all those years in school, we're now 15 years or more, and then even longer if you go off to university, all those years in school, that when you pop out the other end, you've actually got things which are really useful, are going to really, fire your career up. The question really is, what's going to be different about that now? And I think a lot of the work that we've done at the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education has given us a lot of confidence. And Rob mentioned T levels. So developing those 600 apprenticeship standards with employers. About 1,000 employers worked on that. Developing T levels with 250 employers, which is basically the technical equivalent to A levels, where employers have worked and said, this is what it needs to look like. This is the software that we use. This is the modern techniques we use. That is what they need to be learning. And having done that and designed those together, which are now just starting to roll out, I really think they're giving us solid foundations to feel more confident to say, you know what, the closer we can get our colleges and our other training providers with our employers, and we're basically going to, there's money going into it as well to set up the business centres, to set up those collaborations, to invest in the right equipment, the latest stuff as well. So I think now's the time for this education, technical, further education, vocational education. And I think all of that, the timing is now. The only unfortunate thing is the global pandemic has accelerated the need. If we'd have had a couple more years that we thought we were doing, we would have really been able to build this up. And because we have hundreds of thousands of skills gaps today, in so many professions, a lot in Sue's area in the health service, but also in almost everything, in construction, in modern construction methods, in modular, anything to do with a green job. We've got so many, anything to do with software development or computers, digital, so many skills gaps. And we're now going to have large groups of people unemployed, and they're not going to match. So our job now is how we can run as quickly as we can. So that's why we've got the lifetime skills guarantee for adults. We're introducing things like boot camps, 12 to 16 weeks intensive courses that we can work with employer groups to say, we're doing a welding one soon, but they've been digital, construction, just to basically say, right, we'll do intensive courses. So if you want this profession, if this is something that interests you, there's going to be a route for you to get there. But unfortunately, that we're going to have to run to catch up, because I think the impact we were considering was the impact of artificial intelligence, robotics, more disruption of existing methods and changes of business models. And on top of that, and before that, we've had a global pandemic, which has kind of sort of fast forwarded the need. But I think I really look forward to working with employers, and I'm definitely going to be on the phone to Mike and see how we can get more and more employers like him following his lead, because it's just a win-win for everyone. And never have businesses been more invested than what skills come out of the school or college gates than now, because there's a lot of global skills shortages, and we've also post-Brexit got a lot of opportunity we want to give our young people, and building that skills pipeline is something we all want to do. Everyone gave us an opportunity, and we want to give that to other people as well. It's one of the biggest pleasures you get actually in business or in your professional life is giving other people the opportunity and helping nurture their career. So I think the time's right, and I think it's really we've got a very exciting opportunity to build this and revolutionise technical education in the country.
Absolutely, and you can feel the enthusiasm that you absolutely are 100% behind what you say. One point though, you talked about all those skills gaps, and of course there are many technical skills gaps, but the same research, whether it's DFE's research, CMI's research, indeed CBI's research, or the World Economic Forum, also highlights that the management and leadership skills are every bit as core skills as the technical skills. It's really the marriage of the two that create that productivity boom. So what can we do to ensure that that message is also anchored, that it isn't just about the technical skills, but also the management skills? What Sue, you as an accidental manager who's now a converted and great a chartered manager. What do you think we should do to get that message across to employers?
I think, you know, the benefits of management training just outweigh themselves, really. They are, it's so important, I think, to, you know, ensure that your teams are led well, you know, and I think that the nice thing for me when I left my last position was that one of my staff said that I inspired her to be the best that she could be, which is what every manager and leader wants, you know. So I think, you know, it needs to be put out there that actually management and leadership is you know, it needs to be, it's primary, it's so important in any job role, really.
And would you agree with that, Gillian, that it is also a core skill? You said as much earlier in the broadcast.
Having spent all my early studies doing business studies, and then when I went back to school, I did the Sloan Fellowship Leadership and a Masters in Strategy and Leadership. So I am pretty much, I've walked that talk. It's the game changer. We've all worked for good managers and we've all worked for really bad managers, and how different you feel under those two scenarios. I mean, one of them, you almost, you know, you jump out of bed in the morning, you can't wait to get in. The other one, you're just dreading it. It's so important. Management, leadership, building the confidence of others, building the teamwork of others, building clearly communicating strategy, making sure people understand what they should be doing and helping them be their best, motivating them. It's vital. And I don't know, people seem to think it happens naturally or something, that we all, you know, suddenly become one. No, you don't. You do it by taking the time out to think about it and to think about yourself and how you need to change to be the best leader you can, to be the best manager, and to give the best opportunities to people around you. So I've walked the talk, and as you know, several times, and every single time it's been a life-changing experience. And actually, even the Sloan Fellowship made me start to think about wanting to do a second career, which is actually what led me into politics 3 years ago. So, you know, it inspires you, it stimulates you to think, what next? What next? You're always thinking, what next? Not for you, not just for you, for your business, but for everybody you work with. And I think that's an important thing. And you get the confidence to know that that's the right thing you should be thinking about.
Absolutely. And we know that when you're a good manager, what really happens is you boost your self-awareness and your self-confidence. And that makes you able to really have a much greater impact on others. And it's a critical part of boosting the productivity and building back better. Now, the other thing that came through a lot in terms of building back better is, you know, an emphasis on putting greater emphasis on lifelong learning, on shorter, more flexible interventions of learning. You know, how are we going to stimulate the take-up of those, in your view? What would be your ideal vision of what you would like to see there? Who would like to kick us off? I know, Gillian, you've got to leave soon, so maybe address that to you and then go to Rob and then our apprentices.
Again, I think it's going to be key to work with employers. So what we've done in terms of the skills boot camps, and actually that's a bid is going on right now, but employers are basically coming together and saying, look, we've got some skills gaps here, working with local college, local providers to put something together to say, okay, give us the funding and we'll sort this out. So we're doing it at the moment, but it's always difficult to communicate stuff that governments are doing. Governments do loads of stuff, but you know, it's really hard to communicate clearly to everybody. So I think what we've got to do is just make sure that we, you know, keep showing some brilliant examples of where these things are changing outcomes for people. And I think that's what we'll continue to do. I noticed there's some questions in the chat box, Anne. I just wanted to,
Great. So
if you haven't seen them.
Let's go to those. So a couple of questions here. There's one from Trudy. Can Gillian give any insight into the future thinking of the government with respect to the continuation of the Level 7 Senior Leaders programs? There's a lot of pushback against higher level apprenticeships because employers appear to prefer them. over level 2 and 3. But actually, I'll let you take that one first.
Well, I think that people do have different views, and it's a financial view about the apprenticeship levy. The one thing that did go was the MBAs, because the MBAs are a fortune, and that was basically, I don't know, 3 or 4 apprenticeships for you know, giving a younger person opportunity, and that didn't seem right. And actually, if I think about my own career, I've never known anybody do an MBA on an apprenticeship. I mean, I paid for mine myself, but normally you pay for it half with your company, or your company sponsors you and then you have to stay for years. So this was not a good use of the apprenticeship levy. But we have level 7, and level 7 will stay, and obviously the you know, Rob and the team there work on the right standards for that. One of the early things that somebody suggested to me is that perhaps, you know, we should stop apprenticeships and not have degree level apprenticeships. And I just looked at this person and said, you know, you obviously don't realise you are talking to the only degree level apprentice in the House of Commons. Like, just so not on my watch. I mean, it is a life changer. It's what people aspire to. It's brilliant for the brand and the brand recognition, because you know, degrees are already sold. Well, if you can do that and get the skills in a job, it's almost seen as, I think it will be seen as superior. And in fact, there's more applicants for degree apprenticeships than there are for some of the top courses in Oxford and Cambridge now. So, you know, they're really, really well sought after. So we just need to get loads more of them. And as Michael says, make sure that people are aware of them so that we can work with companies to offer them. The level 7 stays, the level 6 stays. The MBA was the one that we didn't fund, because there's better, fairer ways to do that, let's say.
I think that's understood. I think Michael did do one of those MBA degree apprenticeships. Michael, what do you think of the decision?
I'm disappointed with the decision, it's got to be said, but I can see the arguments that that it's taken some of the funding away from younger apprentices, arguably. And maybe a fairer way of doing it would have been to look, if you look at SMEs and larger organisations, you know, if you look at me as an example, I wouldn't have done my MBA without that funding. It has been the catalyst towards me making the business more sustainable and bringing on other apprentices within the company. So I think there's a bigger picture to look at with maybe SMEs, and sometimes government decisions are made with a broader view of all companies, with a broad brush across all companies. Large organisations may well be able to afford it. SMEs, I know from my own experience with who was within my cohort and the benefits of the people who work for SMEs, it was absolutely the trigger for them to be able to do it. And everybody has made an impact within the companies. You know, one of the great things about the apprenticeship, in my opinion, is when you do an MBA or a senior leadership apprenticeship, the work that you do on your own company. So we've got one of our managers is doing the Chartered Managers degree apprenticeship at the moment at Manchester. Came to the company with no experience, great potential, is doing his degree, and each of his modules he's bringing back to our workplace. It's having a benefit in our workplace, and that for me is true learning. You know, it's applying academic theory and learning that you didn't understand back in your practice, and making you a more rounded individual. And yeah, just to go back to the original point, you know, I do believe that it's the senior leaders that need to be engaged. So by taking away the MBA, it does take away some of the currency and put some people off. And I do think you need the advocates at senior level to plant the seeds at a lower level. And so, you know, I don't think that's been taken into account in the measure. So
that's a good insight, maybe for SMEs worth a reconsideration. Thank you for sharing that. Another question here from Omar. Have the employers onboarded new apprentices, or how have employers onboarded new apprentices during lockdowns? And have they had any issues or challenges with apprentices working remotely? If so, any advice for other business? Sue, I don't know if you're working remotely, or if Rob, you can give some advice there.
So I haven't been working fully remotely, because as an operations manager, that's quite challenging to do. I think, you know, we've enabled quite a bit of remote working at the practice, which obviously last year nobody was remote working at all. It's been quite challenging. I think we set things up like Teams, Microsoft Teams channels, so that people can keep in touch. And I think to a certain extent, people can feel quite isolated when they're working from home. So, you know, we make that effort to sort of keep that communication open. We have a Teams call every morning, whether we're working at home, whether we're on the site, just to make sure that everybody is included. But yeah, I personally haven't been working from home too much, just one day a week. But you know, there's still the communication channels between me and the site, and actually, but I'm probably needed there more than at home. So I'm more.
Any insights you could offer in terms of remote working for apprentices, either Gillian or Rob?
I'll have a quick go from a practical sense. And the different sectors face different challenges, and I think it's important to see it through a sector lens rather than a universal solution. A couple of things that we've seen work really well, where an employer has been inclusive, and I think Sue's just pointed to that. That's really important here. And also getting the induction right is really, really important. And in many respects, if you get the latter right, the apprentice becomes really committed to the journey. And that's part of the commitment statement and the upfront sort of collective buy-in. And the other thing I'd say is apprenticeships actually are a hugely flexible vehicle. You know, they're essentially bookended by employers. You know, they say what you need to learn, and then they turn up at the end and say, have you done that? But in the middle, that journey is very individualized, both to the business, to the sector, and to the individual. So actually working flexibly within that, pulling forwards training modules, so the off-the-job bit keeps on going. So as well as actually focusing on what you can do to support the individual, it's also exploiting the freedoms in the vehicle and of the apprenticeship vehicle. And that's, I think, one of its sort of key benefits to employers. And I think Michael has been a tribute to that as well, in the way that he's talked about using it and it coming back immediately into the workspace. And I'd just finally say that the Institute's tried to be as flexible as it can in terms of endpoint assessment, and also adapt methods to allow as much online assessment. There are 130 flexibilities in there now. So, you know, we're always open to do more. So, you know, we'd love to hear from people if they think more is appropriate there, whilst not threatening quality.
So that brings us to a question from Laurie on this very topic. And I do know that online assessments with educators and with us are very popular, as well as with learners. So people will probably keep those post-COVID. But Laurie is asking exactly what you offered to ask, which is, we've been significantly impacted by COVID over the past year, which has limited my ability to achieve our off-the-job hours in the public service. Can you offer any advice as to how I can do that?
Off-the-job element of an apprenticeship is really, really important. And I think that the commitment that's been shown to that, you know, at all levels of leadership in the Department for Education is both really important, but more importantly, it's what employers recognise and want. And it's been such an important part of re-establishing the reputation of apprenticeships in a way that, you know, was significantly threatened before the Richard Review and the latter work by Sainsbury. So, you know, we shouldn't question how important it is, and also how it genuinely equips the apprentice for being successful in an occupation rather than just being successful in a job. You know, there are flexibilities there. We would encourage people to use that and, you know, front load apprenticeships. You know, there are clearly significant challenges. I think the most practical bit of advice is what a business can do to help a learner, an apprentice, to keep going online. You know, what support that they can provide and what they can put around that individual, both in access to technology, but also the support to help them on that particular journey. But, you know, we can see how testing education has been, or how tested it has been through COVID, and its support, its perseverance, its determination, and not losing sight of why the 20% is there.
Some great points, and you have been extremely flexible, and all providers have been very fortunate. I know Gillian must leave us now. I think we have time for one more final question, but I do want to say, Gillian, thank you so much for joining us and being such a passionate advocate. You know, CMI is a huge fan of apprenticeships, and the chartered bodies are as well, and we all stand ready to really help you build back better with practical, high-quality career paths that are inclusive. Thank you so much.
I know. I'm a huge fan, Anne, and thank you for arranging it. And sorry I have to leave. It's been brilliant, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. So thank.
Brilliant. So thank you. We have time for one more question before we have to wrap up. And it's the final question from Adrian to the apprentices, which is a great question that you'll enjoy answering. How do you manage the demands of your study with your day-to-day job? What a great question to end on. Let's start with you, Sue.
Yeah, it is very challenging, especially over the last year. We had a pause in the apprenticeship because of how much has happened, obviously, over the last year. It is very challenging. I think one key thing to remember is that you're always learning, you're always developing in your job. So every single day, especially with me taking on a new role, there was a lot of new learning that I was taking on. So and all that new learning helped me in my ability to do my course. So there is a time commitment involved, obviously, but you sort of concentrate on, you know, we have like a week's learning, and then we go away and we write our assignment. And I think, yeah, we just try and get on with as much as we can, but it can be challenging. But I think we're always learning, so you know, we're always adding to our portfolio, so it's quite easy to demonstrate that learning and skill. But
and that's a great point you make, that you're taking your practical examples and putting them in your portfolio, and I think that's something that you would encourage. Those day-to-day on-the-job things are also part of your learning and your portfolio is what you're saying.
Absolutely. I think a lot of my project evidence is work-based. So yeah, and that's the really key thing with apprenticeships. You can do that. So if you know you're doing the job, so you've got the evidence there, and yeah, so it's a lot easier.
Super. And Michael, what's your advice? How have you managed it?
It's a challenge, you know. If it was easy, everyone would do it, and I think that makes it all the more rewarding when you do it. You know, it is a challenge, but very rewarding. My one bit of advice is to engage your manager. So a bit of a different perspective for me, because you know, I don't have a boss. It's my company, but we've got 6 people going through the organisation at the moment, and have taken the time to spend with them, because similar to what Sue's alluded to, really is to pick subjects within work that you can relate to, because then you do it in work and it doesn't feel like there's any separation between the apprenticeship and the work. So when we have people being educated in our company now, I'm their mentor, or we appoint another mentor for them, and we always have an open discussion. And my one bit of advice to them always is pick something that you're working on, or a problem that needs to be solved in work, because then you can do your homework in work. And really, I think that's the essence of an apprenticeship, really, is to link the learning with your day-to-day job. That's what, to me, it's work-based learning. That's what apprentices are. And you should try and forge a closer link between the two as you possibly can.
So I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Michael, because you're exactly right. Rob, what's your advice here? How do you see people coping well?
You know, I think great points have been made by, you know, the practitioners, Sue and Michael. I suppose I would offer a slightly different, I wouldn't disagree with anything they've said. I'd just offer a different perspective. And that is that learning should be fun and exciting. And, you know, it needs to feel adventurous and inspire people to see it as fun, exciting, and adventurous.
And what a great note to end on. So if you have been inspired and have had fun, then please do consider getting involved more with CMI, but just click on the link in your chat. And please do consider doing an apprenticeship if you're in the workforce or would like to be in the workforce, or if you're a student just finishing. And if you're an employer, please offer apprenticeships. They offer a great route to progression. You can hear the excitement from everybody here on this session. So thank you so much to my guests. You've been amazing. Really appreciate your time, and have a great National Apprenticeship Week next week. Take care, everybody.